All right. Well, thank you for having us. I know I'm excited to be here, and I'm sure Catherine is as well. Just a heads up, I have technical issues from time to time, especially today. So just in case, bear with me because sometimes it shuts down and just starts up again. So I've been having issues today. But my name is Stacey Black. I'm the lead financial educator at BECU, and I've actually been with BECU since 1995. And I always joke around and say I started when I was 10. I guess I have to say that now. Uh, but I have kids, I've had foster kids, and I mentor a lot of teens. And so I have some experience, let's just say. And I like to share my stories, and I love you to share your tips and advice as well. I think this is best if it's more of a conversation and you give us things that have worked for you. Um, but yeah, use the chat. We're going to monitor that closely. And I would like to introduce now my colleague, Catherine Yang. Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about what your role is today?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine. I work with Stacey, and I've been with BECU for almost 7 years or so. It's been great. I don't have kids, but I definitely think that this is a great topic, and I'll be assisting in the chat and also providing links and resources. So feel free to send in your questions, and we will get them answered. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So again, the most important thing is the Q&A. So Catherine's going to monitor that because I cannot multitask. But before, actually, I'm going to go back. Before I launch this poll, I do want to know, I like to ask, how old are your kids? And then it gives me a good idea. I have a feeling we're going to have a big range, Catherine, but that gives me an idea. If we don't have any teens, we'll just forget about the teenagers. No, you won't. But what are you seeing in the chat,
Oh,
Catherine?
nice. We're getting a lot. We have 11, 15, 8, 8 and 10, 2.5,
Ooh, okay.
15 and 12, 16. I see a 15, a 16, 13, 14, 17, 9,
Wow.
11.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a teenager, preteens, 14 and 16,
And then a
12 and
two
17,
2 year old. So we have from two to like
to
teens on the
17.
line.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I have information for
8, 8 and
all.
5.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So some of you are just starting out on your journey. My kids are grown. And I will say one of them recently moved back in. And so at first, Catherine, I was like, oh no, what did I do wrong? But he's still very responsible and he's really trying to buy a home, which we all know can be difficult right now. So we have a huge group on the line with us in terms of ages of kids. But I'm curious, and if you could actually enter this in the chat as well, how did, or, and sometimes people say I didn't yet, but I'm curious, how did you learn financial responsibility or how did you learn about finances? And I always think about this. My parents did not talk to me about money at all. And my parents were divorced or are divorced. And my dad had a huge stack of credit cards. I remember thinking, my dad is rich. Oh, we're rich, right? Uh, yeah, I had that thought for a while. But Catherine, did your parents talk to you about finances? I don't know if we've ever talked about this actually.
Oh yeah. I think for me it was, yeah, definitely different messages from different, like my grandmother would say different things. My dad and my mom not as much, but my dad for sure as well. But it wasn't clear until I got older, but it was also more like, no, you can't buy that. Or, oh,
Right, right,
that's too
yeah.
expensive, or yeah, you better stop. So
Yeah, and I think as parents, a lot of times we're just yes or no. Like,
yeah.
can I buy this? No. And we
Yeah.
don't discuss it. And I think there are opportunities for those discussions. So give me a few. What are they saying? Where they
Let's
learned?
see. Still waiting for people to put it in the chat if yeah, if your parents were the ones that did it or if it was friends. I think as I got older too, I think maybe when I was past 22, that's when my dad fully was like, okay, you need to learn and start bringing out like this is what your account's going to look like, etc. Let's see. Trial and error, people are saying. When
Yeah,
they went
me
to
too.
college away. Some say self-taught, learned how to balance a
Oh, yeah.
checkbook in home econ. Mostly learned what not to do from my parents.
Yeah.
That can also be the experience as well. Yep.
I was
Um,
going to say a lot of us learn both, you know, we could learn bad habits and good habits. I hope that I think that I learned from some of the bad habits I saw growing up. And I think a lot of parents feel like they may not be the experts, and so they don't want to talk to their kids about it. But I read a study that's really interesting, and it was that 50% of people who closely monitor their finances and pay attention say that they learned about finances from their parents. So to me, there is some correlation there.
yeah.
But a lot of people do tell us that they learned it on their own through trial and error. And I think it's great as parents that we're thinking about how can I start instilling these good habits early, right? So we actually did a survey at BECU, and this was several years ago, but we asked parents a lot of questions. And I think we surveyed 1,000, I think it was 1,000 consumer or parents, right? And 72% of them said they aren't talking to their kids about money. And we asked why. And we asked them, what do you talk to them about drugs? Yes, they also, everyone talks to their kids about drugs, bullying, things like that. But when it comes to money, we don't always talk about it, right? And some of the reasons cited were that they felt someone else could do a better job, maybe at school. Um, and the parents felt like they weren't managing their finances. So why should they talk to their kids about it, right? If they can't manage their own. So it's a lot, right? And it's a lot of stress to think about everything you have to talk to kids about. But I do think when we're talking about finances, we can weave a lot of this into our everyday conversations if we just remember to have conversations and talk about it. So, why is it important? I think we all know why, but the top one is financial dependency. We don't want them to be dependent on us, right? And the idea is maybe we could be dependent on them later on, but we want to teach them to be able to manage their finances on their own. And you know what? I had a lot of credit and debt problems when I first started out with credit cards because I didn't realize what I was really doing. No one talked to me about it except the person at the store who said, would you like to open a credit card, right? And they're telling me all the great things I can do with it. And then just one of the other things is incorrect information. I watch TikToks for research purposes. That's what I say. And then I start watching the funny ones and stuff. But there's so much incorrect information out there. And I have friends call me all the time and well, maybe not a whole bunch of friends, but they might call and say, hey, I saw this on TikTok. Is this real? What do you think of this? And imagine our kids are watching this and being influenced by it. And so we need to get them to research and find out if this information is real. Uh, and then family contact, family conflict, sorry, the number one reason for divorce in America is finances. And so it can cause conflict. I see it all the time. And that is why this is so important. And we start off with our kids with healthy relationships when it comes to money. Catherine, is there anything in the chat before we move on?
Uh, well, nope, just a lot of answers to the last question, which is
Nice.
great. A lot
Okay.
of people learn themselves, or when they got a job at 18, they realized the cost of goods and rent.
Oh,
Um,
right. Yeah,
or
that's an
if
eye
they
opener.
got, yeah, or a little bit from their parents, or when they started getting their first checking account, etc. Other people, so just a great response to that question.
Yeah.
We
And
appreciate
you know, I think a lot of my age group and my friends did not learn from our parents.
it.
It was by trial and error. And I love that more parents are thinking about this now. Um, a lot of parents say, you know what, let's leave it to the teachers at school, but there are no minimum standards, financial literacy standards in Washington State right now. We're working on it. I wish there were, but I think as parents, we need to take the reins. And it's okay if we don't know all of the answers. We can teach our kids how to find the answers, is what I always say. Use your resources. So this is what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to break it down. And I have tips for all different age groups. So let's jump into it. And if you have tips, please put them in the chat. I have learned some great tips when I'm throughout the years teaching this class. So I'll try to remember to share some of those as well. Some creative ideas for teaching kids. So the first tip is around earning money and explaining that money doesn't, I mean, we probably have heard this and may have said it. I try not to say this to my kids. If they ask for something, you say, money doesn't grow on trees, right? But dive deeper than that. This is an important lesson to learn. So talk about how you get money to buy things, and talk about how you might have to work so many hours to pay for this one item, instead of just saying money doesn't grow on trees, right? So create opportunities for them to learn and earn money. I share this story, and I hope my cousin is never on one of these calls, but when her daughter was really young, and this was before I had kids, so I was an expert on parenting, right? Uh, but we went shopping, and her daughter had like $10 from her birthday, and she wanted one of those I remember wanting one too, those electric cars that kids can drive. I don't know if battery operated, and it was like probably $500. And her daughter said, do I have enough for this? And she said, yes, you do, and bought it for her. And I remember even then thinking, ooh, yeah, she's going to have a misconception about money because of that. I should check in and see if she does. But that was a teachable moment to say, you can't afford this now, but if you save up, and give them opportunities to earn money to save up as well. But get creative with it too. When my kids were younger, I would take them grocery shopping with me, and they hated it after a while. They learned my tricks, but I would have them look for, like, if we're shopping for the cereal, which cereal brand is the best deal, looking at unit price. It sounds like that's something.
My grandmother would drag me around to J.C. Penney or at Marshall's and be like, see, selective shopping compared.
Yes. And do you think it helps, Catherine? Because I know Catherine shares freely that she loves shopping at the grocery store. It's like fun for you, right? So do you think that helped when your grandma did that?
I think it instilled like already those early habits probably of like liking to compare and like seeing what other brand is this, or what's the value of that, except like looking at what other stores have. Yeah, I probably instilled that.
Oh, go ahead.
We do have a question, a side question from the group, that if they will get a copy of the slides after this presentation.
I can definitely send a copy of the slides, and hopefully they can be distributed. And I know this is being recorded as well, but yeah, cool. I'll send that out. The other thing I was going to say, I wish I would have thought of some of these, like when you're in the middle of parenting, right? Afterwards, you're like, oh, I should have done this, but I would have loved, I think it would have been fun and creative, and my kids would have liked it, to have some sort of competition, like give them each a list at the store and see who can, find the cheapest item. I mean, there's so many fun things I could have done, but I was tired, right? So, all right. Any other questions, comments coming in the chat?
Right now, I don't see anything else besides.
All right, cool. So we're going to talk about where money does come from. Instead of like taking money out of the ATM, tell them like, this money I put in after I worked how many hours, right? And talk to them about where that money's coming from. I remember, and we've probably all done something like this, when we were out shopping, and my mom loves to share this story since I'm a financial educator now. And she said, oh, I don't have any money for that. And I was like, you still have checks, right? So we need to explain where that money's coming from.
That association.
Right, exactly. Because that
Yeah.
machine, right? Just
And
go to the machine.
I have a funny story. When I first got my job at Target, my parents refused to buy me a car. They took me to my Target where I was working, and they would pick me up. And then I got my first paycheck, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so much less because I thought, you get paid. And I showed it to my father, and he's all like, and this is what taxes are. And he's
Yeah.
explaining it's not one for one. Just because you get $8 an hour
Yep.
doesn't mean you're going to get that whole amount. So now do your real math. So
Yeah,
that
Catherine
was
and
a
I,
huge lesson.
we've seen that in high schools too, right?
Mhm.
We teach classes in high schools and students do not know the difference between gross and net income. I know my son, I overlooked that. Like he got his job and he was planning it out, like, oh, I'm going to work this many hours. And he expected, and I hadn't had that conversation. And I realized, ooh, we need to have a conversation about taxes, right? There's so much to it that we are so used to that we might not remember that we need to talk about it. Tracking now, parents always ask me, do you have any good apps or ways for kids to track money or allowance, things like that? And there are some great apps out there, and everyone has their own personal preference. I've looked pretty deeply into a couple. One is called Goal Setter, and I really like that. As a parent, you can assign chores, and it is like based on age too. You can change it, obviously, for teenagers. But also, what was the other one? Green light. I really liked as well. But do your research. There are so many options out there. Um, you
Oh,
got
we
to
have
find what works
someone
for
that
you.
their kids use Greenlight
Oh,
and the
good.
Green Light debit card and corresponding app. We really like it. Nice.
Nice. Yes. Yep. Look, and I really liked Goal Setter. I uh, really dove into Goal Setter, and I did some work with teens asking them what they thought of these different apps as well. I would say Goal Setter and Greenlight. Maybe I'm confusing the two, but Goal Setter is more like the parents need to be involved. Um, so some students that might not, some of the teens said my parents would not be this involved in assigning chores and things like that. But there are apps that are gamified where teens can learn education and financial topics and earn points. Look for something coming from BECU hopefully soon. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but anything in the chat,
Uh,
Catherine, about
uh,
apps? Or,
we do have, let's see, a question or any suggestions for tracking I owe you this
oh,
amount for that. You owe me $5 for that candy. You have $12 in allowance left. Is there any suggestions or maybe something you already know that's existing?
yeah, I think it's good, and some people might disagree. And remember, this is my opinion, but I think it's good to start kids out with an actual written checkbook register, something that they actually have to do the work, right? And so I've had parents who tell me that they keep either something on the refrigerator, but if you're talking about them tracking how much money they have left, then I would definitely have them. And you could even print out a really simple, depending on age, simple register type product. Or there are apps as well. I use a free checkbook register app just for myself. So you could find one that is age appropriate and user friendly to help your child track that. I hope that answered that question. Let me know if not.
Okay.
Any others coming in?
Let's see. No, someone shared that they at the medical center also teach personal finance and on for adults. So they have a little playlist for everyone to go check that
Oh,
out.
nice. Awesome. Okay.
Let's see. Can we have access to the recording? Yes, this is being recorded. So so I believe Sebastian will help us get that for everyone after this seminar. Someone says, I'm interested in perspectives on giving a regular allowance or having kids earn money for doing
Yeah.
chores.
That is
Good one.
a great one. And here's the thing is it depends who you ask, right? I'm a believer, and with my kids, I use like you get paid for doing chores. Some parents, and this is fine too, you have to decide what works for your family is This is your set amount you get each month or each week, and you have to manage that without doing chores, or a mixture of both, right? I did try allowance for a while, but it just felt like just giving them money for nothing. I wanted to teach them that they have to earn money to buy things. Another thing I did, and I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but when I had older kids and foster kids, and their friends were always at my house. And I had a big house and a big yard back then. And so I would put extra chores on the refrigerator on Post-its and put a price, like mow the lawn, $10. It was a big lawn. And then I told anyone who was there, any of the kids, like, if you want to do one of these chores and get paid, it's up for grabs. My kids never did it, but their friends loved coming over and doing the chores. But that might not work for your family. So hopefully that helps. I think you just really need to evaluate what's best for you and your family. Any other questions, Catherine?
No, that's
Okay.
it for now.
All
Yeah.
right. I would say younger kids, I would start with a piggy bank or a jar so they can physically see the money in that clear jar or piggy bank. And then they get the concept of that physical money. I've had families use charts and graphs. Someone told me they had a goal for going, I can't remember what the goal was. I thought it was a trip, but they tracked, like, you know how people track for fundraisers, that thermometer, they did that and they hung it on their wall, and they would get so excited. And so it gave that message: we save for what we want. I mean, it would be easy to get a credit card, but we don't want them to do that, right? So, all right, I'm going to move on, but if you do have any questions, I get so excited about this topic, so I got to speed it up a little. This is something along these lines. We used to have these moon jar money boxes, and I think they're great. And for the younger kids, you can, there's a link if,
Yeah.
Catherine, you want to put that in the chat, a
Yep.
link on Amazon. There are cheaper versions, but we started working with this company when they first were starting out. And I love them because they are all about educating, and I'm sure earning some money, but they have three separate banks: save, spend, and share. And kids would always ask me, share with who? Like the person sitting next to me, my friend. So we have to talk about sharing, right? And what that means. But then when the child gets physical cash, they decide for themselves, how much are you going to save for future? How much are you going to allow yourself to spend? Because we have to give ourselves permission to spend as well. And then if you want to share with others. So it has a little instruction book. I just really like it. I do wish it was see-through because I like the see-through aspect too. But Catherine put that link in the chat if you're interested. And I did look today and there were some cheaper versions too. All right. One thing I do want to talk about are some personal financial literacy standards. There's a US nonprofit called the Jumpstart Coalition, and Catherine, if you want to put the link in the chat, we have a link to all these national standards, and it doesn't mean that these are all being taught in schools, or these are just national standards that this coalition came up with, that, like, if you're in kindergarten, this is where you should be with these different topics when it comes to financial literacy. I love it. At first, I just looked at it as a financial educator, but if I had this as a parent, I felt like it would be so helpful. So we have the link, and I'm going to go through some of these with you. So those different age groups we talked about earlier, because we have a big variance in age here. If you have kindergartners, when you're talking about personal income and where money comes from and being compensated for work, this gives you an idea of where you should be with your child, or what your child should be doing. They should be able to discuss special household tasks that might be suitable opportunities to earn money, things like that. I just think this is so helpful, just to give you as a parent a framework of where you should be with these different ages. So I just took snippets here to show you the differences. This is really designed for people who build curriculum around personal finance, schools, like just a tool to use. So any questions about that? This is kind of giving you an idea where they should be at different ages. All right, I'm going to keep going.
We do have a question about money box. What is your opinion on having an additional box of save, spend, share, and invest?
Ooh, I do. Now, I think we have seen it gather that more young people are interested in investing, which is a good thing. And I had a family, I thought this was a great idea. Because I usually tell parents to get your kids started out, find something that they're interested in and let them invest some money in it, help them, right? And then they are interested in, maybe it's a video game company, I don't know, but something they're interested in, and then they're interested in tracking and they learn about it. So yes, I do think if that's important to you, yes, I would add it in. Thank you for saying that. But I had a family who told me they did I think it was a family 401k, and they actually matched and they like wrote it
Oh,
all out. I thought it was so
that's
clever. Like,
creative.
and so when their child gets a job, right, that
Yeah.
offers a 401k, they'll have
Yeah.
at least a basic understanding of what it means. But
Mhm.
yes, I like that idea, is adding in investing. And maybe, Catherine, we need to think about that in this session too, because we work with teenagers and they all want to learn about investing because everything on TikTok, I guess, right? All right. So teaching kids to save, and I do have the Jumpstart standards around this as well. But again, saving is so important. And so I, early on with my kids, set financial goals. I would ask them, what's something you want? I would have them draw pictures when they were younger. And my son, I don't know why I remember this so well. He wanted a go-kart so bad. He was going to get a go-kart. But then he got older and it changed to a car, right? But again, setting goals, age appropriate goals with your kids, sitting down, having them write them out or draw pictures, just talking about your financial goals as well. Like, we want to buy a car, right? And so I'm going to start saving, just having those conversations. I think it's also important to leave the stress out of it, though, right? Because we don't want, a lot of us associate finances with stress. We don't want that for our kids, hopefully. I don't. And so not talking about, oh my gosh, we're in debt and we need to get out of debt, but thinking positive and talking about the positive things we're doing to get ahead. I hope that made sense. I feel like I just kind of went off there, but set financial goals as a family, have them set their own individual goals. I did this with my kids and it backfired. We were saving to go to Disneyland, and we actually had, I like the big see-through jars so they can see the money building up. And I had Disneyland written on it, kind of like this jar. And we would put all of our extra coins in there to get to Disneyland. But I also had them set personal goals as well. And then I could say when we're out shopping, and even as they got older, if they'd say, oh, can we buy this? Well, we want to get to Disneyland. It's going to take us longer to get there. So you can have that conversation. But then they started doing it to me as they got older. Like, I'd look at a pair of shoes and they'd say, oh, remember, we're saving to go to Disneyland. Are you sure? So just be prepared for that as well. But setting those financial goals really gives the family something to work towards. Offer, if this is something that you believe in, I guess. I always tell people it's up to you, but I did this. I offered rewards for saving money, and it was kind of like a match. I told my kids, whatever you save for a car, when you turn 16, I will match. Luckily, they weren't very serious about saving for a car until they were like 14, 15, right? But it's talking, you can teach them about interest, and tracking and things like that. So getting them to save can be tricky. So get creative with it as well. Anything coming in the chat, Catherine?
Oh, no, I see it's like They say it's a fabulous idea. One person was commenting on the match, or giving that incentive for saving and giving them that goal. But no questions yet right now for the group.
Cool, yeah. It's funny because parents sometimes ask me too, should I pay for good grades? And again, that's personal preference, I guess. I did that for
Yeah, that was
my
me.
kids and my son. Oh, did you get, and do you think that
Yeah,
motivated you, Catherine?
it did for me it did. They're like but my family was a bit more strict. It was every A, I think I got something like I forget how much per A, and then I didn't get anything for anything lower than an A.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
It's pretty strict.
Um, I tried it with my son when he was in elementary school. Well, my son and my daughter, but my son called me because I noticed in elementary school, it's like reading and then they have grade, 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 grade. So he was counting up all of, like he called me. I kept the voicemail for a long time. I was like, I got my report card. It's worth 500 and something. I was like, oh, no, 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 that's not how that works. But yeah, work it out ahead of time. Um, yeah, so great. All right. Um, but making it a habit, talking to them about how important it is to save, pay yourself first. The older they get, and when they start getting jobs, the way you can help them make it a habit is have it come right out of their paycheck and go into savings. Talk to them about that. And that's what I did for my kids as well. They were like, wait, what? I'm not, wait, but keeping it there is another thing, right? Getting them to keep it there. All right. I'm going to keep going. Next, we're going to talk about, oh, this one is tough, modeling smart shopping habits. And again, if you have any tips, put them in the chat because I, again, learned lots of new things during this session. But modeling smart shopping habits, this is kind of what your grandma did for you, right, Catherine?
Yep.
Um, but it's having conversations while you're out shopping, taking advantage of it. You know, I remember when my kids were little, I would like try to teach them colors while we were out shopping. I'd be like, show me something red, show me the number 5, whatever. But we could do that with money as well, right?
Mhm.
So talking about wants versus needs is hard sometimes for kids to grasp. I used to work with elementary school kids and they would get so confused. Like, what do we have to have it to survive? That doesn't mean much to them, but we can
Mm.
talk to them about, hey, we're saving for Disneyland.
Mhm.
And do you really need this right now? Or is there something less expensive? And having that conversation with yourself as well, like, as you're shopping and the kids are there, do I really need this? I don't think I really need this. And tell yourself no out loud sometimes. Um,
Modeling that.
one thing that, what was that, Catherine?
Oh, just modeling that for the child and having them hear you
Yeah,
say
right.
it as well. We
Work
do
it
have
out.
a
Yep.
couple
Yeah.
questions. One
Yeah.
question is there a certain percent or percentage should we aim for savings, spending, giving each of them, giving or matching for each of the children? Is there something more appropriate maybe for each age group to attain for?
You know, it typically, like if you were to ask any financial, well, maybe not any financial, but typically we tell adults save between 20 and at least, well, let's say at least 20% would be good to start with. And so that's what I did for my kids is I was like 20% off the top and we would do the math as they got older. But you have to decide, like, especially the giving piece. I don't, some family, I mean, what does that mean to you? Is it giving money? Is it giving your time? Is it giving, donating goods? So not everyone donates money, right? So you could change that up a bit. You just make it work for your situation. I could send you, I mean, I wouldn't use what we usually tell adults, which is the 50, 30, 20
Yeah.
rule. Um, but as the kids get older, you might
Mm.
go with
Okay.
that one.
Okay.
But younger kids, I like to let them decide too and have some input. Like, how much do you think you'll want to spend, right?
Mm.
It's all about age Catherine, was there
You're
something
making me think a lot about
else?
my niece and nephew right now. Like, oh, what
Yeah, right.
should I
I
tell them
know.
now
I
next time I
know.
babysit them? We do have another good question. How do you feel if your kids want to buy a big ticket item and they do have the money for it, or they've saved enough for it, but it's more than what we are comfortable for them to spend, or it's something that we don't necessarily want them to have, but they do
Yeah.
have the money to buy it? Um,
Well,
is there like a gray area, or is there a way to approach that? Yeah.
yeah, I think you need to put your family value. I mean, if that's important to your family, um, you need to have that conversation. Like, this is not something that we feel you should buy right now. And I would say have those conversations before they start. That's why we have those conversations about setting financial goals, so we can say, I don't know if that's a what else is there, right? So
Mm.
kind of backing up and starting when you're setting those financial goals to let them know what I mean, and it's all in how you approach it, right? Like, nope, you can't do that. But is there something else that you could put that money towards, right? And kind of steering them in the right direction. Hopefully that helps
Giving the child like an
answer that question.
alternative choice, maybe getting them to think of other options, maybe more than
Yes, yep.
the, that big
And
ticket.
it's okay to say no because, yeah,
Let's see.
right, yes.
Yeah,
And look
okay.
at alternatives.
Look at alternatives. Let's see. Other people put in the comments, we try to encourage
Yeah,
kids to spend up to 50% of what they saved. However, we have not stopped them from purchasing something they want and can afford. We've let them make the mistake by providing them the knowledge and options to save more for a bigger ticket item. Oh, that's nice. We've been teaching them to choose an option between that item over other items, hoping they learn to make the right choice. So kind of what you said too, of you can choose to put all this money in here,
yeah,
but you have all these other options you could buy. Another person said
right, yes.
your
I'm
child
glad.
might.
I just want to point out. Oh, go ahead, Kath.
Go ahead, go ahead. I was running into the next comment.
Well, I was gonna say I really like that because I used to do this with my kids, as I would say, here's how much you have for school clothes, and they would want to go to the most popular expensive store. If we just let them do that, right, they're going to do that. But I would take them to like Ross and say, look at what you could buy here, right? And then we went to the more expensive store, and then they wanted to go back to Ross, or I think it was Ross. But showing them it's all about the conversations, right? Instead of saying, no, you can't buy that, we can kind of show them the alternatives and say, you could buy this instead and still have money left over. And so I appreciate that comment. Thank you for sharing, because it is, yeah, think about how to have those conversations and kind of steer them. And I love that you said you want them to make mistakes. We do classes where we have students, they get a career and they have to make purchases, and we want them to make bad choices so that they go over budget in a safe place. And right now, hopefully that's a safe place where you can talk through the mistakes they made, right? So I love that comment. Thank you for sharing. Anything else, Catherine?
Another good one is one person said if their son is buying something, I always ask him to give the cash to the cashier as well, instead of me doing it for them.
Yes.
It's great teaching them that feeling of giving them, like giving the cashier their own cash. And
Yes. And counting it out. Yes.
Mhm.
I love that. I remember being so nervous, right? So let's break them early, get rid of that nervousness early. Yeah, but we talked about most of this, just explain unit price, like I said, talk about it. And big purchases, plan them out and share invite your kids into the planning, right? It can be fun for them as well. So when my son was a teenager and I was buying a car, I sat down with him and did the research, and he helped me research it, and he really got into it. And then we talked about the costs involved and researching the gas, like which car gets better gas mileage. He was most interested in which car was the fastest and looked the coolest, but we had those conversations, right? And he's going to bring that into adulthood when he's making decisions. So, Again, I love the allow mistakes. Let them make mistakes. The
Mhm.
problem is sometimes they don't realize they made a mistake, right? And they don't
Mhm.
regret the purchase. So we have to allow them to do that. All right. So
Definitely.
spending and saving, these are the standards. I'm going to leave them here while we see if there are any questions or comments, Catherine.
Yes, we did have a good question. Any advice on navigating tipping culture when out to eat with your kids?
Well, it depends what your thoughts are on tipping, right? Um, I guess I would like to know that. But so if you're pro tipping, then talking to them
Yeah,
about it and how it, my sisters were both waitresses when they were younger, so
yeah,
they are pro tipping, right? And they will talk to their kids when they were younger about how this is part of the pay. And they knew how the system worked and they explained it, right? But you need to, again, think about your values. I don't know if that's the right word to use here, but right as a family and what's important to you.
yeah.
Catherine, I don't know if you have anything to add there, or if anything
Well,
else is coming in.
yeah, there's some stuff to add. There's some other people that are bringing in some other comments. And yes, I think tipping is like super personal for me too. I've gone against my parents and my grandmother. They're not the best. They don't, the tipping culture is different. Our tipping beliefs are different about restaurants and
Yeah.
service, etc. So, but we're all you learn to grow into your own what you think is more comfortable, but it's good to have that conversation. Another one person mentioned, part of my challenge when grocery shopping, both for me and for teaching, is that in-app discounts make it hard to actually calculate and compare unit
Mm.
prices. I do use those grocery apps too. I think that's
Yeah, I don't use the apps, so that's a new one for me, actually. I've never had that question come up. So that's a really good question. Um, and because I used to actually with my kids, I would keep before, well, I used my phone after a while, but I would even keep a piece of paper. And every time I put something in the cart, I'd be like $5 just to show them, right? And then I'd round up to the nearest dollar. But when
Mhm.
price comparison shopping, I mean, it is going to be more work, because you have to show them the app, right? And then talk about, gosh, yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's much more complicated. But the idea is to teach them how to use those tools to save money in the future, right? I don't know. Did anyone else have any comments or suggestions around that?
Not yet, but it's just a very valid
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
How I like your
Right.
idea of
Because,
sticking would you say you put a sticky note, like $5 or something, when you put something in the grocery cart?
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
something
And just, I
tangible for
kept a little
your kids.
notepad and kept track. After a while, I used my phone calculator and would just calculate. And so they could see, number one, that I am going to make sure I stick to my budget in grocery
Mhm,
shopping. And
mhm,
then while I'm looking at individual items, talking about like, ooh, what's the best choice? And showing them the app and having, gosh,
mhm.
yeah, this new technology, I guess I'm not used to it. That makes me feel old now. But
Technology has
yeah,
changed a lot of things. Valid point.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those are things you have to think through. And how are you going to teach your child? Yeah. I love it. Okay. I already mentioned this. I talk about giving and it says emphasize giving if that's important to your family, right? Like I'm not going to tell people you have to take X amount and give it. And giving is different for everyone. It could be donating old toys, right? And teaching your kids that way. I have a friend who I don't know about this, Catherine, and I'm curious what everyone else thinks. She lets her, for birthday presents, lets her child pick one present and donates all the rest. I don't know, but he loves it. He gets excited to go
Mhm.
donate it. Yeah. So again, it's family preference, but having conversations about how you are giving to others, right? If it's not all about money, you could talk about the clothes and everything, and talking about the charities that are important to your family, right? When I read somewhere that when parents talk about giving to a charity, their kids are 20% more likely to do so. Um, And I don't remember what that was from, but I should get updated numbers too now that that might have been an old number. But talk about it with your kids and why it's important to you as a family and how you're going to give back. Any questions or comments about that, Catherine, or anything else?
Yeah, we have a good one that says that, they're talking about the grocery shopping, the comparison, and then the apps. And then someone said that's another education opportunity about online fraud. And I just want to say, yes, we also have a fraud
Oh, yeah.
seminar as well. And we also have one that we
Yeah.
teach to high schoolers. And so it all goes about the different ways
Yep.
fraud can happen and how to protect yourself, which is definitely something to talk to your children about for sure. As technology keeps changing with AI,
Absolutely.
everything. Definitely a
I,
big thing.
I think we could have a whole session on just how to talk to your kid. Some of the things we hear in high schools, um, even recently when we were teaching fraud, some of the scams against teens are ridiculous and scary. So we should do a whole session on that. All right, moving on from that that serious topic. But at what age, I'm curious, your thoughts, what age do you think the average American gets their first credit card? And I was actually surprised by the answer, but go ahead and type in the chat. And then Catherine, you can tell me
Yeah.
what numbers you're seeing the most of. I'm just
Ooh,
curious.
18,
What?
19, 20. A lot of 18s. 21,
Yeah,
20,
that
18,
would be
18,
my
18,
thought,
and
right?
then
Like,
115, one night, and then one other
oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, sometimes maybe if you're an
16.
authorized user, right, you could be
Yeah.
on before. But I know that I got my first credit card probably the minute I turned 18, and I got into major trouble with credit cards. So this is an important topic. I just know from experience and talking to teens and all the teens I've worked with. The average age, I thought it would be younger, is 20 to 21. And it's typically the first 2 years of college. And it used to be so common for these credit card companies to be on college campuses and try to get these college students to get their first credit card with them. And statistically, um, you keep your first credit card for about 20 years, is what I read somewhere. So imagine they all want to be the first credit card company that your child goes with because they'll probably have them for quite some time. And yes, I got into major trouble with credit. I did not understand how it works. Um, I am surprised. Actually, I'm not surprised anymore, Catherine, but I don't know if you've noticed how many high school students do not know the difference between a debit card and a credit card. And we ask them, how many of you have a credit card? And a lot will raise their hand, and then we figure out that it's actually a debit card. So they do not understand the difference between the two. So when you're using a credit card, you can talk about what a credit card is and that you have to pay it back plus extra money because you're buying something without having the money and someone else is paying for it. So you also want to talk about why good credit is important. And a lot of times, this is where parents start to feel like, I don't know the answers to this, right? So research it together. Like, let's take a look at why having good credit is important and research it together. And then that's showing them also how to research, right? And use the tools at their fingertips. This next one, explain how interest works. I think it goes with the next one. Give your child a loan with interest. And that can teach them about how loans work and interest. I always say charge them interest, at least something, and have them write up a little contract and have them sign it and say, I mean, this is going to be the real world soon. I have a really good family friend, and he's just started college actually, and he his work forgot to take out his taxes. So he owed like $2,000 in taxes, and he did not have the money, and his family didn't have the money. And so I lent him the money to pay his taxes, but we had to have a sit down. I He loves me, I'm sure. I made him create a budget, like where is your paycheck going and how much you're this much is interest, and I had him sign the contract. So I'm helping him and he's learning, right? I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable. Is everything good
Yeah,
still,
a
Catherine,
little
with
bit
me
skipped out and
talking? Okay,
paused
good.
for a bit, and then now you're back.
Okay.
Hopefully. Um,
Okay, cool. Yeah, so, and I think a lot of parents don't know themselves. If I wasn't in the job that I'm in, I wouldn't probably research credit reports and scores. So researching along with them can be helpful. Anything coming in chat, Catherine?
we just have one comment. You don't have to pay extra. I'm a huge fan of floating my charges and paying off the card every month. Yep.
Yes. Yep.
We do that. And that's good that's another conversation if you want to have that too when they're ready for their credit card is, kind of like pretend like it's a debit card, pretend like you're only buying
Yep.
things that are
And
only you're ready that you have the money to pay it off. In that.
and that's an important conversation because those rewards cards as well, they get young, well, everyone. That's how they hook you, right? And so we try to talk in high schools about be careful of those rewards cards if you're not paying it off in full. Yeah, so definitely think about everything that your family does and what's important to you, right? I'm so glad you added that in there. All right, so I added the Jumpstart standards here, but I'm going to speed it up a little because we have a few more tips to get through. Make learning fun. Again, I think I said this earlier that as I always, when it's financial topics, well, not anymore, but I used to always associate it with stress. This is going to be stressful. I have to do the bills. I'm going to be stressed out, right? It doesn't have to be that way. I feel like my parents were stressed out when they were paying the bills, and I heard conversations, right? But if we manage our finances well and try not to talk about all the negatives and the stress that comes along with it, that could help our kids in the future because they're going to experience the same things we are, stressing from time to time about money. So making it so they don't automatically associate it with stress, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? So making it fun. We have some tools I'm going to share with you that have we have some links that have games and activities you can do with different ages. Um, for the younger kids, I love having them sort money, even like, I don't know. I don't know if I have a concept of a 2-year-old anymore because my grandson's 8 now, but having them sort coins into piles, like these are pennies, into like piles, or, practice making change. I loved play money when I was a kid, right? So bills, things like that. And as they get older, there are different things we can do with the older crowd as well. So I'm going to share some of those resources. Before I do, Catherine, anything in the chat any questions, comments? Okay, cool. All right, because we're just about at time. Um, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and Catherine's going to put all these links in the chat for you. It's consumerfinance.gov, I believe, /parents. They have great resources for different age groups. And you can see young children, school age children, teens to young adults, and they have tips and activities you can use. So definitely check that out. Um, Also, we work with Green Path. If you're a BECU member, it's free. And so you can utilize them for tips. They have tips for parents. They have great resources on their website. So check them out as well. We put the phone number up and the website, but Catherine's going to put that in the chat as well, I believe. So you don't have to rush to get that. And then I love this resource, and I believe I have a link for that as well, Catherine. This is a BEC resource that we put together, and it's called The Next Big Talk. After, that survey I talked about where we surveyed 1,000 parents, this is what we came up with to kind of help have those conversations, right? Because they sometimes are hard conversations, especially if we don't know where to start. So this is more for teens, I would say, pre-teens and teens, but if you click the link, you'll see it's called the Parents Guide to the next big talk, and it will have conversation starters and then activities, right? So one of the activities is to go grocery shopping or like plan a meal and go grocery shopping within a budget. So there's good activities that you can use in there as well. So check that out. And if any of you have any other resources for parents that you want to share in the chat, let us know. If you have something that's worked for you to, to get that conversation going with your child, no matter what age. Bottom line, I think it's important to keep it age appropriate, right? We're not going to probably talk to our 2-year-old about loans yet, but we'll take baby steps and build up to that. And I loved the questions about the allowance. And if you want to put your opinions in the chat, like, do you give your children allowance? What are your opinions on that, right? But in the end, it's all up to us as parents. Any questions, comments? We have a few on the line. If you can just take a moment and scan that QR code, and Catherine, if you could put the link in the chat if it's there, in case they don't have a phone available. But if you could fill that evaluation out and let us know your thoughts on this session. I pay close attention. We make changes based on your feedback. So definitely share any feedback you have, good, bad, or otherwise. But we will open it up for questions, comments at this time. Anything in the chat, Catherine?
Not yet.
All right.
Oh, we got here resources to talk with teens on investments.
Ooh, who is it that is doing, do you know, Catherine, you might know off the top of your head, is it, who is letting kids invest? Oh, I had it. Is it Fidelity? I'll have to look. Yeah, let me look back and see, because I did have a resource for that. And we can ask our investments people
Investment
too if they
services team.
have
Yeah, we will
resources.
get
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
you on that one. That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good one. We have a game we play in high schools with students about the stock market. It's called Invest in Our Pretend Companies and really see how the market works. So you could even pretend invest with your kids. Give them
What
pretend money
are,
and follow it.
and that's, you might have already answered that. What are safer ways for kids to learn about investing, and how early would you recommend them starting?
I mean, you could start early with like just teaching the concepts earlier, right? I wouldn't have them invest in the actual stock market, but younger kids like elementary, right? And say, okay, would you, I'm starting up this company or whatever. Oh, someone put it in the chat. Thank you. Oh, for me, I'll get it from them. Someone chatted me the answer to that investment question, so I'll send it to the group. But I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, starting. Sorry, Catherine. Just starting to talk about the concepts early on. And I know, Catherine, you're big on investing, right? I'm curious, did your parents or your grandma talk to you about that then back
Yeah,
then too? Is that
my
part of the reason
father
you think?
mainly. Yeah, my father and my grandmother were a big influence. I think when I was like 21 or 22, like once I was almost done with, in the middle of college or so, I had a big talk about investments. And then they showed me like the Wall Street Journal, and they showed their key companies that they were investing, but also index funds, dividends, interest, high yield savings accounts versus this,
Right.
CDs.
Yeah. There's
And then, so they gave me like this whole thing when I was like young in my 20s. I definitely appreciate it a lot more now. I didn't understand everything when I was in my 20s, so, but I think it was a good foundation for sure. And that was just the way they approached it. It wasn't like they planned, I think. I think there was something they legally had to sign when I was like 21, because I think they had made an account in my name already. Like they were like power of
yeah.
attorney or something
Oh,
like that. Like had to sign it off and say, okay,
got
now
you.
we're signing
Yeah.
it off, but this is everything you need to learn as you like take responsibility for this, etc. So, but definitely,
Well, and that's why I always like
Oh, there you go.
Oh, sorry, I cut you
Fidelity,
off, Catherine. I
personal
was gonna say,
finance, investment, savvy kids. Oh,
yeah,
nice.
there you go. I knew it was Fidelity, but thank you for that, for sending me that link. But what I was gonna, yeah, making it age appropriate, right? And
Mhm.
thinking about the concepts. I didn't know much about investing before I was older. My parents never talked about it. I do think more and more young people are hearing about it, want to know more about it, especially when things happen like, like what was it, GameStop, that GameStop
Mhm.
situation where people were like
Yep.
buying. I have known younger folks, I hate to say that, but who have invested in cryptocurrency and lost it all. Just they didn't know what they were doing. So I think it's a lot of times researching yourself and having those conversations. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. Catherine, will you put our emails in the chat real
Yeah,
quick?
for sure.
But thank you all, and we'll, yeah, hopefully see you again. Have a great day, and good luck teaching your kids
Yep.
financial responsibility.
Thank you for joining us.